The moon was a bone chip on velvet when I killed the Evinrude. Silence, thick and absolute, slammed down over the doghouse, my battered aluminum skiff. Tahoe's water, usually a playful slap against the hull, lay flat. Too flat. Like obsidian stretched tight. Hannah, my 10-year-old black lab, lifted her head from my thigh, a low, questioning whine vibrating in her chest. Not fear. Not yet. Confusion. The lake was holding its breath. Easy, girl, I murmured, my voice swallowed by the unnatural quiet. I cast my line towards the drop-off near Rubicon Point, the lure vanishing into the ink. Fishing Tahoe at night? Pure magic. Usually. The chill Sierra air, the impossible starscape, the tug of a Mackinaw in the deep dark, it was church for me. Tonight, the altar felt cold. The first tremor wasn't felt. It was seen. The water directly ahead, maybe 30 yards off the starboard bow, shivered. Not a ripple from a fish. Not a wave. It was as if a giant, invisible pane of glass beneath the surface had been struck. The water fractured into perfect, geometric shapes, hexagons and pentagons, holding for a frozen second before dissolving back into the seamless black. My breath hitched. Hannah's whine sharpened into a growl, deep and primal, her body rigid against my leg. Okay, I whispered, reeling in fast, the line slithering back like a nervous snake. Okay, that's new. I scanned the shoreline. Emerald Bay was a jagged silhouette under the stars. Lights from the distant casinos on the Nevada side glittered like fool's gold. Normal. Utterly, terrifyingly normal. Except for the lake. The lake was wrong. Then came the pull. Not on my line. On the boat. The doghouse lurched sideways, scraping metal groaning, as if an immense hand had grabbed the keel and yanked. I stumbled, grabbing the gunwale. Hannah barked, sharp and frantic. The water around us churned, not with waves, but with violent, localized vortexes, swirling like miniature black holes opening and closing at random. One opened directly under the stern. The boat tilted violently, stern first, icy water sloshing over the transom. Shit. I scrambled for the bilge pump switch. My fingers fumbled, slick with sudden, cold sweat. Hannah scrabbled on the wet deck, claws scrabbling for purchase. The vortex vanished as suddenly as it appeared, the boat slamming back level with a jarring crash. Water sloshed around my ankles. The bilge pump coughed to life, a frantic mechanical heartbeat in the suffocating silence. What just grabbed my boat? Earthquake? Underground gas? Something else? Why the geometric fracture? Hannah's barking turned into a continuous, high-pitched shriek of terror. I followed her gaze. My fishing line, still dangling over the side, was taut. Not the rhythmic tug of a fish. It was vibrating, humming like a high-tension wire. I grabbed the rod. The vibration traveled up the graphite, buzzing into my bones. It wasn't fighting. It was resonating. Heart hammering against my ribs, I leaned over. The water directly beneath the boat wasn't black anymore. It glowed. A sickly, phosphorescent green emanating from deep below, illuminating the shapes rising towards the surface. Fish. Mackinaw. Big ones. But wrong. Their scales shimmered with that same unnatural green light, pulsing like infected wounds. Their eyes, reflecting the glow, were wide, black voids devoid of any spark of life. And their mouths. God, their mouths were crammed with jagged, needle-like teeth that seemed too numerous, too long, glinting in the eerie light. They weren't swimming. They were floating, suspended in the glowing water, heads tilted upwards, those dead eyes fixed on the bottom of the boat. On us. One, larger than the others, drifted closer. Its jaw unhinged slowly, impossibly wide, revealing rows of those needle teeth and a gullet that seemed to descend into infinite darkness. It didn't snap. It just gaped. A silent, hungry void inches below the surface. Hannah lunged. Not at the fish. At me. She slammed her body against my legs, knocking me back from the gunwale, snarling and snapping at the air above the horrifying spectacle. She wasn't protecting me from the fish. She was protecting me from looking at it. The terror in her eyes was absolute, a mirror to the cold dread solidifying in my gut. The vibrating rod suddenly went slack. The glowing fish vanished, plunging the depths back into absolute blackness, leaving only the frantic gurgle of the bilge pump and Hannah's panicked whimpers. The silence rushed back in, heavier than before. Oppressive. What were those things? Why did they just stop? What did Hannah sense that I didn't? I grabbed the oars, my hands shaking violently. Rowing. I had to get to shore. Screw the boat. Screw everything. Tahoe wasn't safe. This placid, postcard-perfect lake, where families swam and billionaires parked their yachts, was a lie. Something ancient and hungry had woken up beneath its crystal-clear depths. I pulled with all my strength. The oars bit into the water. The doghouse didn't move. Not an inch. It was as if the lake itself had solidified around the hull. I pulled harder, muscles screaming. Nothing. Hannah paced the small deck, claws clicking, her whines escalating into frantic yelps. She kept looking over the side, then back at me, pure animal terror radiating from her. Then the sound started. Not from the water. From the air. A low, subsonic thrumming felt more in the bones than heard. It vibrated the fillings in my teeth, rattled the loose change in my pocket. It grew louder, deeper, resolving into a discordant, metallic groan, like the hinges of a colossal, rusted door being forced open miles below. The sound didn't come from one direction. It came from everywhere. It was the lake. Tahoe was screaming. The boat lurched again. Not sideways. Downwards. Stern first. Water surged over the transom, cold and shocking. Not just water. It felt thick, viscous, like chilled oil. It swirled around my calves, climbing fast. The bilge pump choked, sputtered, and died. The green glow returned, stronger now, welling up from the deep, illuminating the thickening water sloshing in the boat. Shapes moved within it, not just the toothy fish, but longer, serpentine shadows, coiling and uncoiling in the luminous murk. Hannah barked, a desperate, shrill sound. She scrambled towards the bow, away from the rising, glowing water. I abandoned the oars, lunging for the emergency paddle clipped to the inside of the hull. My fingers closed around the smooth plastic. As I pulled it free, the bow light, powered by the now-dead battery, flickered once, twice, casting strobing, nightmare shadows. In that final, dying flash, I saw it. Reflected in the terrified, dilated pupils of my dog, staring past me at the stern. Not a fish. Not a shadow. A shape. Vast, impossibly so, rising from the glowing depths behind me. Smooth, curved, like the flank of a submerged mountain, but moving with silent, deliberate purpose. and etched onto its surface, barely visible in the fading light, were patterns. Geometric. Hexagons and pentagons. Just like the fractured water. What is rising behind me? What do the patterns mean? Ancient Leviathan? Alien machine? I didn't dare turn. Hannah's reflection was pure, unadulterated horror. She wasn't looking at the shape. She was looking into it. And then she did the unthinkable. Driven by a terror deeper than loyalty, deeper than instinct, she launched herself over the bow rail, into the pitch-black water ahead of the boat. Hannah! No! The scream ripped from my throat, raw and ragged. She hit the water with a splash and immediately started paddling frantically, blindly, away from the boat, away from me, towards the distant, unreachable shore. The glowing water near the boat seemed to recoil from her splash, then surge hungrily towards her. Come back! Hannah! I screamed, leaning precariously over the bow rail. The thick, luminous water was waist-deep in the boat now, cold leaching the strength from my limbs. The subsonic groaning intensified, vibrating the hull, making my vision blur. Hannah swam, a small, dark shape against the vast, glowing black. She was fast. But the lake was faster. A swirling vortex opened silently 10 feet ahead of her. Not a whirlpool. A perfect circle of absolute darkness within the green glow. It didn't suck. It swallowed. Hannah paddled straight into it. 1 second she was there, strokes frantic but strong. The next, the dark circle closed over her like an eyelid blinking shut. Gone. Vanished without a ripple. The green glow pulsed once, violently, then subsided. Silence. Deafening, absolute silence. Even the groaning stopped. The viscous water in the boat stopped rising. The unnatural light faded, plunging everything back into the cold, indifferent starlight. The doghouse floated freely again, rocking gently on suddenly normal water. Emerald Bay. Rubicon Point. Distant casino lights. Normal. Horrifyingly normal. Hannah was gone. Taken by the stillness. I stood frozen, water chilling me to the core, staring at the spot where she vanished. The emptiness wasn't just around the boat. It was inside me. A yawning chasm where my best friend, my shadow for 10 years, had been. Grief, sharp and brutal, warred with a terror so profound it felt like my skeleton was trying to vibrate out of my skin. The lake hadn't just taken Hannah, it had shown me its teeth. And I was still floating on its tongue. Minutes bled into each other. The cold deepened. The rational part of my brain, the Noah who fixed carburetors and laughed at bad horror movies, screamed, "Row! Get to shore! Call for help!" But the Noah standing knee-deep in that impossible water knew the truth. Shore was an illusion. Help wouldn't believe. Not until it was their dog, their child, swallowed by the beautiful dark. A single, fat raindrop hit my cheek. Then another. A cold, whispering rain began to fall, dimpling the obsidian surface. It felt like tears from a blind sky. I forced myself to move, limbs stiff and uncooperative. The emergency paddle felt alien in my hands. I dipped it into the water. It moved. The lake had released its hold. Why? Had it gotten what it wanted? Was Hannah enough? I started paddling, not towards the distant, mocking lights of the Nevada shore, but towards the looming darkness of Rubicon Point. Closer to where she vanished. Every stroke was agony. Every splash sounded like a gasp. The rain intensified, plastering my hair to my forehead, running into my eyes. It blurred the stars, turning the world into a shifting, wet charcoal sketch. Why release the boat? Why let me move? Is it watching? Is Hannah alive? What did that circle mean? Halfway to the point, the compass mounted near the dead console spun wildly, its needle whirling like a dervish before settling, not on north, but pointing straight down into the depths. I stopped paddling, the boat gliding silently. The rain drummed on the aluminum hull. Tap, 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 like impatient fingers. Then, beneath that sound, another. Faint, rhythmic. Thump, thump, thump. It came from below. Deep below. A slow, ponderous heartbeat resonating through the hull, vibrating up through the soles of my boots. It wasn't the mechanical groan from before. This was organic. Immense. Alive. The Leviathan beneath the fractured water. Its pulse echoed the frantic hammering of my own heart, a dreadful counterpoint. The green glow began to seep back into the water around the boat, not as a uniform light, but as pulsing veins, spreading like luminous roots through the depths. They converged, faintly, towards a point directly below where Hannah disappeared. The thumping grew louder, stronger. Thump. 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 It felt like the lake itself was a living lung, expanding and contracting. Hannah. Was that pulse hers? Had the lake absorbed her? Was her terrified heart now beating within that colossal darkness? The thought was a physical blow. I leaned over the side, peering into the glowing veins, desperate for a sign, a shape, a flash of black fur. Instead, I saw eyes. Not the dead voids of the fish. Dozens of them. Small, sharp, intelligent pinpricks of cold green light, materializing in the depths just beyond the reach of the pulsing veins. They hovered, watching me. Not with hunger, like the fish. With curiosity. A chilling, alien assessment. They darted closer, then vanished, only to reappear elsewhere, always just outside the main glow. What are the Watchers? Sentinels? Parasites? Why are they observing? Is Hannah bait? The boat shuddered. Not a pull, not a tilt. A jolt, as if something massive had brushed against it deep below. The Watcher eyes scattered like startled minnows. The luminous veins pulsed brighter, converging violently towards the epicenter below Hannah's vanishing point. The deep thumping accelerated. Thum thump thum thump thump. It sounded frantic now. Agitated. A new shape materialized within the brightest cluster of veins. Not the smooth flank of the Leviathan. Smaller. Roughly the size of a dog. It glowed with the same sickly green light, but its outline was indistinct, blurred, as if struggling to hold form. It thrashed weakly against the pulsing light that bound it. A silent scream echoed in the frantic thumping of the deep heart. Hannah. It wasn't her. It couldn't be. But some deep, broken part of me recognized the struggle, the terror. The lake was digesting her. Transforming her. Turning my Hannah into fuel? Part of itself? One of the Watchers? The grief morphed into a white-hot rage, burning through the paralyzing terror. They couldn't have her. I didn't think. I acted. The emergency paddle was in my hands. I raised it like a spear, not over my head, but pointed straight down, aiming for the heart of the glowing mass where the struggling shape pulsed. "Let her go!" The roar tore my throat raw, lost in the drumming rain and the lake's accelerating heartbeat. I drove the paddle down with all my strength and terror and love, plunging it deep into the glowing water, straight towards the core of the light holding the thrashing shape. The effect was instantaneous. Catastrophic. The green light exploded. Not outwards, but inwards, collapsing with a sound like 1,000 panes of shattering glass amplified through a subwoofer. The water around the paddle blade turned instantly, shockingly black, not the black of night, but the absolute, light-sucking void of the circle that took Hannah. The void raced up the paddle shaft towards my hands. The watcher eyes winked out. The deep, frantic thumping stuttered, stopped. The luminous veins vanished, plunging the depths back into utter darkness. The rain lashed down. I tried to let go. Too late. The void was faster than thought. It touched the paddle grip. A cold beyond comprehension, a cold that burned, shot up my arms. It wasn't just cold, it was absence. The absence of light, of heat, of self. I screamed, but no sound came out. The void was climbing my arms, turning them into numb, blackened sticks. It reached my shoulders. I looked down, seeing my own chest beginning to dissolve into that perfect, hungry darkness. My last sight wasn't of the stars or the rain, but of the spot where Hannah vanished, now just featureless black water. The thought wasn't fear. It was a final, desperate pulse of love, aimed into the consuming dark. "I'm coming, girl." Then the void reached my eyes, and the world, Tahoe, the stars, the rain, the terrifying beauty of it all, was simply swallowed. The rain continued to fall on the empty, gently rocking boat. The doghouse drifted silently under the indifferent stars. Lake Tahoe, pristine and perfect once more, held its secret deep within its cold, dark heart. The stillness was complete. And it was hungry. The line went taut with a jerk that nearly wrenched the rod from my hands. Not the spirited tug of a perch or the heavy resistance of a pike. This was solid. Like my lure had snagged on bedrock. Except I was casting into 90 meters of obsidian water off Bellagio's Punta Spartivento, where the only bedrock was far, far below. Che Caso. I muttered, the sound swallowed by the pre-dawn stillness of Lake Como. No wind. No lapping waves. Just the vast, mirror-smooth expanse reflecting a sky smeared with too many stars, and the distant, sleeping lights of Menagio across the water. Peaceful. Postcard perfect. The kind of silence that usually soothed my soul after weeks grinding code in Milan. Tonight, it felt like the lake was holding its breath. I braced, applying steady pressure. The rod bent, graphite groaning. Whatever I'd hooked didn't budge. Didn't fight. Just resisted. Like trying to pull up a sunken Fiat. Sweat prickled my neck despite the alpine chill. Okay, Alex, I thought, snagged some old mooring chain. Tourist junk. Cut the line. But the stubbornness of it, it felt deliberate. A challenge. I leaned back, putting my weight into it, boots scraping on the damp wooden planks of my little rented barcino. The rod tip dipped violently, then sprang back. The line went slack. I stumbled, catching myself on the gunnel. My silver spinner plopped back onto the surface, glinting under my headlamp. Undamaged. No frayed line. Just free. What did I hook? Why did it let go? Why does the water feel thick all of a sudden? I reeled in slowly, eyes scanning the circle of black water illuminated by my lamp. That's when I saw the bubbles. Not the fizzy pops of methane or a surfacing fish. Large, fat, glistening orbs rising slowly, deliberately, from the impenetrable depths directly below where my lure had snagged. 1, 2, a dozen. They broke the surface with soft, wet plops, releasing not air, but a faint, shimmering mist that smelled like wet stone and something else, something vaguely metallic, like old blood on copper. The mist didn't dissipate. It hovered, coalescing just above the water, forming a thin, localized fog bank about the size of my boat, right where I'd been snagged. My skin crawled. Como wasn't known for odd gas seeps. This felt manufactured. I swung the headlamp beam. The mist swirled within itself, thick and opalescent. And deep within its shifting core, something solidified. A shape. Rough-hewn, gray. The top of a head? A shoulder? It was impossible, a trick of the light and fog, but for a heart-stopping second, I saw the curve of a stone ear, the suggestion of a closed eye. A statue? Submerged here? Then the mist thickened, obscuring it completely, and the bubbles stopped. The fog began to slowly, almost reluctantly, drift apart on a non-existent breeze. Was that a statue? How? Why the mist? What was that smell? Adrenaline buzzed in my veins, sour and electric. Get out. Now. I yanked the cord on the little outboard. It coughed, sputtered, and died. I pulled again. Nothing. Not even a click. The battery light on the console glowed green. Full charge. I checked connections, solid. The engine was warm from the run out here. It should start. I pulled again. Silence. A profound, heavy silence had descended, thicker than the mist. The distant lights of Menagio seemed farther away, dimmer. The water around the boat wasn't mirror-smooth anymore. It was still. Not a single ripple. Like liquid glass. My reflection stared back, wide-eyed and pale under the headlamp. Then, beneath my reflection, another shape glided past. Huge. Long serpentine, but angular, segmented. Not a fish. Not a log. It moved with silent, impossible speed, deep in the blackness, illuminated only by the refraction of my lamp. It was gone before I could even gasp. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Cosa diavolo era quello? What the hell was that? What just moved under me? Eel? Monster? Hallucination? Why won't the engine start? Panic started its icy climb up my spine. I grabbed the oars, slamming them into the oarlocks. Rowing. Bellagio's lights were maybe a kilometer away. I pulled with desperate strength. The oars bit into the unnaturally viscous water. The barcino lurched forward an inch. Maybe two. Like rowing through chilled tar. I pulled again, muscles screaming. Another grudging inch. Sweat stunned my eyes. This wasn't resistance. This was weight. The lake itself seemed to be holding the boat down. I looked over the side. My headlamp beam penetrated only a meter or so before being swallowed by the absolute black. But suspended in that illuminated layer, dust motes weren't drifting. They were pulsing. Moving in slow, rhythmic expansions and contractions, like microscopic jellyfish breathing. The water itself seemed to be breathing. Thump. The sound vibrated up through the hull, through the oars, into my bones. Deep. Resonant. Like the slow beat of a colossal heart buried beneath the lakebed. Thump. It wasn't coming from one direction. It came from everywhere. It was the lake. Como was alive. And it knew I was here. Is the lake alive? What's causing the heartbeat? Is it connected to the statue? The serpent? The surface tension broke. Not with a ripple, but with a fracture. Like the earlier mist event, but larger. A jagged line, glowing faintly with that same sickly copper-green light I'd smelled, split the water 10 meters off the port bow. It widened, revealing not water below, but an abyss of perfect, lightless void. From that void, shapes began to rise. Slowly. Deliberately. Statues. Crude, weathered stone figures, eroded by centuries underwater. Men, women, some in fragments, just a torso, a reaching arm, a face locked in a silent scream. They breached the surface within the fractured light, water sheeting off their porous stone. Their empty sockets seemed to track me. They didn't float, they stood on the water, rooted to the abyss below. One, nearer than the others, was remarkably intact. A man, hunched, one hand raised as if warding something off, his mouth open in a soundless cry. Moss clung to his stony hair. And on his raised hand, a glint of gold. A ring. Ancient, maybe Roman. My grandfather's voice whispered in my memory, legends say the lake takes offerings. Sometimes it gives things back, changed. Who were these people? How long have they been down there? Is that ring real? Is it a trap? The deep thumping intensified. Thump, thump. Thump. Faster. Agitated. The statues didn't move, but the light within the fracture pulsed brighter. The smell of wet stone and copper blood grew overpowering, making me gag. Then, the water around my boat began to churn. Not waves. Millions of tiny, frantic vortices, each no larger than a coin, spinning like miniature black holes. They swarmed the hull, emitting a high-pitched, collective whine that set my teeth on edge. I watched in horror as the painted wood of the gunwale where a vortex touched it, grayed. Not rotted. Petrified. Turned instantly to rough, porous stone. No! I scrambled back, kicking away from the side. My boot brushed one of the vortices. A jolt of paralyzing cold shot up my leg, followed by a terrifying numbness. I yanked my foot back. The rubber toe of my boot was cracked, gray, crumbling like ancient pottery. The skin beneath felt cold. Hard. The vortices turned things to stone? Is that the fate of the statues? Is it happening to me? The fracture in the water widened further. The statues remained silent sentinels. But something else moved within the glowing void below them. Vast. Darker than the surrounding darkness. It shifted, sending currents through the abyss that made the stone figures sway slightly. A limb? A flank? It was impossible to tell, only the terrifying scale of it, the sense of immense, ancient presence stirring. The thumping became a frantic drumroll against the hull. Thump, 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 thump. The vortices swarmed higher, reaching for the oars. The wood turned gray, cracked, and dissolved into gravel that pattered onto the deck. They surged towards me. I stumbled backwards, tripping over the bench, landing hard. My headlamp beam swung wildly, catching the nearest statue, the one with the ring. Its stone eyes seemed to gleam. Its open mouth, did the edges twitch? Not a smile. Something infinitely more horrifying. A grimace of recognition. Of welcome. Is the presence controlling the statues? Does it want me? Is the ring the key? Or the bait? Driven by primal terror and a mad, desperate idea, I lunged. Not away. Towards the statue. If that ring was real, if it was an offering given back, maybe it was a way out. Maybe it was the only thing the lake respected. The vortices surged, nipping at my jeans, turning patches to brittle stone that scraped against my skin. I ignored the searing cold numbness spreading up my shins. 5 meters. 3. The statue loomed, water dripping from its stony chin. The golden ring glinted, impossibly bright against the gray. The vast presence below shifted, the water heaved. A wave, not of liquid, but of pressure, slammed into the boat, lifting it, spinning it. I was thrown forward, crashing against the cold, wet stone of the statue. My right hand, instinctively thrown out, closed over the statue's raised wrist. Onto the ring. The stone was freezing, porous, alive with a terrible vibration. The gold band was warm. Almost hot. As my fingers touched it, 2 things happened simultaneously. 1, the statue, its stone eyes snapped open. Not carved sockets. Glowing pits of the same sickly copper-green light emanating from the fracture. Its head turned, stone grinding on stone, to look directly at me. That grimace widened into a true rictus, revealing needle-sharp shards of stone deep within its mouth. 2, the ring, it slid effortlessly off the statue's stone finger and onto mine. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The copper-green light from the fracture exploded inwards, collapsing the void with a sound like a mountain falling. The statues vanished beneath the suddenly choppy surface. The vortices dissolved. The crushing pressure lifted. The thumping stopped dead. Silence rushed back, broken only by my ragged gasps and the sudden, frantic puttering of my outboard motor, miraculously alive. I scrambled back, staring at the ring on my finger. It was warm. Heavy. Intricately carved with patterns that seemed to writhe under my headlamp beam, spirals that mimicked the vortices, jagged lines like the fracture. It felt right. Like it belonged. The numbness in my legs receded, replaced by a strange, tingling warmth. Relief flooded me, dizzying and sweet. I'd done it. I'd gotten the offering. I'd survived. I gunned the motor, the barcino leaping forward towards Bellagio's welcoming lights, the nightmare receding behind me. Why did the ring come off? Why is the engine working? Did I win? I didn't slow down until I scraped against the old stone pier in Bellagio. Dawn was bleeding pink and orange over the mountains, painting the villas in warm light. Normalcy. I fumbled with the mooring line, hands shaking, desperate for solid ground, for coffee, for the sound of human voices. An old fisherman, mending nets on the adjacent pier, glanced up. Buongiorno. Catch anything, signore? His voice was rough, friendly. I forced a smile, holding up my bare hands instinctively. No, nothing. Just the dawn. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Hoarse. Older. He nodded, his eyes crinkling. Then his gaze dropped. To my right hand, resting on the pier post. His smile vanished. His weathered face paled. He crossed himself rapidly, muttering in dialect, his eyes wide with superstitious dread. He backed away, dropping his net needle, then turned and hurried off the pier without another word. Confused, I looked down at my hand. The ring was gone. But where it had been, my skin was changing. Around the base of my finger, the flesh was turning a dull, mottled gray. The texture was roughening, becoming porous. Like stone. And it was spreading. Up my finger. Towards my knuckle. The warmth I'd felt was gone, replaced by a deep, internal cold. The numbness was returning, but deeper now. Settling into my bones. I touched the gray patch. It felt cold. Hard. Unyielding. Like the statue's wrist. I looked out across Lake Como, sparkling innocently under the rising sun. The beauty was a lie. The peace, an illusion. The ring wasn't an offering taken back. It was a mark. A transfer of ownership. The lake hadn't let me go. It had claimed me. The process had simply begun. The old fisherman's terror wasn't for me. It was for what I was becoming. What the lake demanded. The next time the moon was full and the water lay still as glass, the fracture would open again. The statues would rise. The vortices would swarm. And deep below, the vast, ancient presence would stir, its slow, patient thumping echoing through the abyss. It wouldn't be looking for offerings then. It would be calling one of its own home. The gray patch on my finger pulsed faintly, synchronizing with a phantom thump deep within my own chest. I closed my eyes, not seeing the sunrise, but the dark water, the stone figures, the impossible abyss. My escape wasn't an ending. It was the first step into a far deeper, colder darkness. The stones didn't just breathe. They waited. And soon, I would join them. The numbness crept past my knuckle. I couldn't feel the dawn's warmth anymore. Only the deep, patient cold of the lake, settling into its new vessel. I whispered the only truth left, my voice already rasping like stone on stone. Sonoka. I am here. The lake, in its terrible stillness, heard. The beer was cold, the air colder, and Thomas was laughing so hard he nearly capsized the canoe. "Dude, your face," he wheezed, pointing at the empty hook dangling from my line. "I swear, Lucas, that pike looked you dead in the eye before spitting your lure back like a cherry pit." Moonlight, brittle and silver, spilled over the turquoise water of Lake Louise, turning the surrounding snow-capped peaks into ghostly sentinels. Normally, this glacial beauty was pure peace. Tonight, Thomas's laughter felt too loud, jarring against the immense, watchful silence of the mountains. Our Coleman lantern cast a wobbly yellow circle on the water, deepening the inky black beyond the canoe's aluminum hull. "Shut up, Thomas," I grumbled, reeling in, the line whining in the stillness. It was huge. Felt like a log. Except logs don't deliberately unhook themselves. 1 second, solid, heavy resistance. The next, nothing. Like it just decided to let go. I cast again, the silver spinner arcing through the icy air, landing with a soft plop outside the lantern light. Silence descended. Even Thomas quieted, taking a swig of his beer. That's when we heard it. Tap. Faint. Metallic. Like a pebble hitting the hull. Thomas frowned. What was? Tap, tap, tap. Faster. Coming from under the canoe. Not random. Rhythmic. Purposeful. Probably just ice shifting, I said, my voice tighter than I intended. Lake Louise was glacier-fed, perpetually cold, but solid ice wouldn't form for weeks yet. The tapping intensified, a rapid staccato tat-tat-tat-tat vibrating up through the thin aluminum floor, buzzing against our boots. Thomas's smile vanished. He leaned over the side, peering into the impossibly clear, impossibly deep water. The lantern light penetrated surprisingly far, illuminating the peculiar, almost luminous turquoise hue unique to glacial silt. But below the light, only endless, cold blue-black. What's tapping? Ice? Fish? Something else? Why the rhythm? See anything? I whispered. Noth, he froze. His eyes widened, reflecting the lantern glow. Lucas, look. I followed his gaze. Suspended in the water column, maybe 10 feet down and drifting closer, was my spinner. The one the pike had spat out. But it wasn't alone. Beside it, impossibly, hung an identical lure. Same size. Same silver flash. Same red feather dressing. I'd only brought one of those. Thomas knew it. Did you? He started, then trailed off. The twin lures didn't hang passively. They vibrated, humming faintly, perfectly synchronized with the frantic tapping against the hull. Tat 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 tat. The sound wasn't just on the boat anymore, it felt like it was inside it, rattling our teeth. How is there a second lure? Why are they vibrating? What's the connection to the tapping? Thomas reached for the net, his knuckles white. Okay, this is seriously freaky. He dipped the net towards the lures. As the mesh touched the water's surface, the twin lures darted sideways in perfect unison, vanishing into the dark periphery beyond the light. The tapping stopped dead. The silence that followed was thick, charged. Then the water boiled. Not with heat. With motion. A swirling vortex erupted directly beneath the canoe, not pulling us down, but churning the water into a violent froth of turquoise and black. The canoe bucked like a spooked horse. Thomas yelled, dropping the net, grabbing the gunnels. I lunged for the paddle as beer cans clattered into the bilge. The vortex wasn't natural. Its edges were too sharp, too defined, spinning with unnatural speed. And within its churning heart, shapes darted. Long, thin, impossibly fast shadows, eel-like but with too many joints, moving with a jerky, insectal speed. They flashed silver, the same silver as the lures. What are the eel things? Are they causing the vortex? Where did the lures go? The vortex collapsed as suddenly as it formed, leaving the canoe rocking violently on suddenly calm water. Panting, we stared at each other. Thomas's face was sheet white. We need to go. Now. I didn't argue. I jammed the paddle into the water. It struck something solid, unyielding, just below the surface. Not rock. Something flexible. Like thick rubber. I yanked the paddle back. The blade was clean. But where it had touched the water, the luminous turquoise color was gone, replaced by a spreading patch of inky, light-sucking blackness. The blackness flowed, tendrils snaking outwards, dimming the lantern light where it touched. It wasn't pollution. It was an absence. What did I hit? Why is the water turning black? Is it alive? Row! Thomas screamed, fumbling for the other paddle. He thrust it into the water on his side. It met the same rubbery resistance. Another patch of black bloomed, spreading faster than the first. The patches began to connect, forming a slick, dark stain beneath the canoe, swallowing the reflection of the moon and stars. The air temperature plummeted. Our breath plumed thickly, frosting the gunnels. The tapping started again. Not on the hull this time. Tap, tap, tap. It came from inside the spreading black stain on the water surface. As if something trapped beneath that dark mirror was knocking to get out. The stain pulsed, expanding with each tap, creeping towards the canoe's hull. Where it touched the aluminum, a hoarfrost of pure black crystals instantly bloomed, crackling as they spread. What's beneath the black? What's causing the frost? Is it trying to breach? Thomas dropped his paddle, scrambling backwards. Lucas! Look at your hand! I glanced down. My right hand, gripping the paddle shaft, thin, branching lines of inky blackness were crawling up my fingers from where I held the wood. They weren't on the skin. They were under it. Like black veins. Cold. Not painful yet, but a deep, penetrating numbness radiated from them. I tried to let go of the paddle. My fingers wouldn't obey. They were locked, fused to the wood by the creeping black frost that was now coating the handle. Thomas! Help me! Panic clawed my throat. The black veins pulsed, climbing past my wrist. Thomas stared, horrified, then lunged. Not for me. For the Coleman lantern. He grabbed it, its metal base already rimed with black frost, and hurled it towards the center of the spreading black stain. No! The gas! I yelled, but it was too late. The lantern hit the dark water. Instead of extinguishing, the flame flared violently, burning with an unnatural, cold blue light. It didn't float. It sat on the black stain like it was solid ice. For a split second, the blue light illuminated what lay beneath the inky surface. Not water. Not ice. A vast, impossible expanse. Like looking down onto a frozen, lightless tundra under a starless sky. And standing on that desolate plain, perfectly aligned beneath our canoe, were two figures. Silhouetted in the lantern's blue glare. One figure stood tall, looking up. The other was hunched over, paddling frantically in the air, our reflections. But distorted. Stretched and wrong. The reflection of me holding the paddle, the black veins under its skin glowed faintly blue. And it wasn't looking down. It was looking up. Directly at me. A slow, impossible smile spread across its shadowed face. What is that place? Are those us? Why is my reflection smiling? Then the lantern's fuel canister ruptured. The blue flame exploded outwards in a silent, expanding ring of cold fire. It raced across the black stain, instantly freezing it solid into a pane of perfect, obsidian ice. The ice shot towards the canoe, hitting the hull with a crack that echoed off the mountains. The impact jarred my frozen hand free from the paddle. I fell back, gasping, staring at the branching black lines now past my elbow. The canoe was trapped, frozen solidly into the center of a 10-foot circle of utterly black ice. The normal, turquoise water lapped against its edges, unable to touch it. The moonlit world felt miles away. Thomas huddled in the bow, shaking violently, staring at the black ice beneath us. Our reflections were gone. Only the deep, lightless void remained beneath the frozen surface. Tap. The sound came from directly below me. From the black ice. Clear. Demanding. Tap. I looked down. There, frozen within the ice, inches below the surface, was my silver spinner. And beside it, its perfect twin. They vibrated faintly, humming against the ice. Tap, tap, tap. The sound wasn't coming from the lures. It was coming from beyond them. From the depths of the frozen void below. Something large. Something patient. Knocking. What's knocking from below? Is the ice a gateway? What do the lures mean? Get it off! Thomas shrieked, pointing at my arm. The black veins were spreading faster now, branching towards my shoulder. The numbness was giving way to a terrible, hollow coldness, like my bones were filling with liquid nitrogen. I clawed at my forearm with my good hand, but the black lines were deep, part of me. Scraping only toward the skin, revealing more blackness beneath. The ice beneath the canoe groaned. A hairline fracture appeared, snaking from the spot where the lures were frozen. Cold, stale air, smelling of deep earth and forgotten things, sighed from the crack. The tapping intensified. Tap, tap, tap. Frantic. Excited. Thomas scrambled towards me, not to help, but to get away from the cracking ice near the bow. His eyes were wild, unseeing. We have to break it. Break the ice. He grabbed the fallen beer can, now coated in black frost, and slammed it against the dark ice near the canoe's edge. The can shattered, spraying frozen beer. The ice didn't chip. It absorbed the blow. The fracture beneath the lures widened. A low, grinding rumble vibrated through the canoe, up through the soles of my boots. Can the ice be broken? What's coming up the fracture? Why is Thomas panicking worse? The black veins reached my shoulder. The cold wasn't just physical anymore. It was leaching into my thoughts, slowing them. A strange, detached calm began to seep through the panic. The frantic tapping, Thomas's screams, they sounded distant. Muffled. Beneath the ice, in the widening fracture, something glinted. Not silver. A dull, dark red. Like old rust. Or dried blood. It moved closer to the surface. A claw? A jointed limb? It pulsed with the rhythm of the knocking. Tap, 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 crack. A section of black ice the size of a dinner plate splintered upwards, dislodged from below. It flipped over, landing on the intact ice with a thud. The underside wasn't smooth. It was covered in thick, glistening strands of black roots? Veins? They pulsed weakly. Through the hole it left, the smell of decay flooded out, thick and choking. The dark red glint was clearer now. A segmented, chitinous leg ending in a barbed hook, probing the edges of the hole, testing the ice. Thomas screamed, a raw, animal sound of pure terror. He stopped trying to break the ice. He stared at the probing limb, then at my blackened arm, then at the frozen lures. Understanding, terrible and absolute, dawned on his face. It's not trying to get in, he whispered, his voice cracking. It's trying to get them out. He pointed a shaking finger at the lures frozen in the ice. It wants the lures. And it wants him. His eyes locked onto mine, filled with a pity deeper than fear. You're the hook, Lucas. You're the line. Am I the bait? Are the lures anchors? What is it? The probing limb hooked onto the edge of the hole. With terrifying strength, it pulled. More black ice shattered. A second limb, identical, thrust upwards, gripping the ice. The hole widened. The stench was overwhelming. The black veins in my arm surged, reaching my collarbone. The cold wasn't painful anymore. It felt right. Like coming home to a place I'd never known but always missed. The frantic tapping from below had stopped, replaced by a low, satisfied chittering. Thomas made his choice. While the thing beneath focused on widening its breach, he moved with desperate silence. He grabbed the remaining paddle, its blade already frosted black. He didn't look at me. He didn't hesitate. He planted the paddle against the solid black ice near the stern and pushed with all his might, using the trapped canoe as leverage. The aluminum hull groaned in protest. The black ice holding the canoe creaked but held firm. Thomas strained, veins bulging in his neck, a sob escaping his lips. He pushed again, a guttural cry tearing from his throat. With a sickening screech of frozen metal, the stern ripped free of the black ice. The canoe tilted violently, pivoting on its still frozen bow. Thomas stumbled but kept his footing, shoving again. The bow broke free with a crack like a gunshot. The canoe shot backwards, skidding across the normal turquoise water, propelled by Thomas's desperate shove and the sudden release. It slammed into the edge of the black ice circle, rocking wildly. Thomas scrambled to the motor, yanking the cord. It sputtered, coughed, then roared to life. He didn't look back. He gunned it, the canoe leaping forward, carving a frantic wake through the moonlit water towards the distant shore lights of the chateau. Did Thomas escape? Why did the motor work? What's happening to me? I was alone, trapped on the shrinking island of black ice. The thing below had widened the hole considerably. I could see its body now, rising through the fracture. Not an insect. Not a crustacean. Something other. A tangle of segmented, chitinous limbs the color of dried blood, supporting a bulbous, eyeless head dominated by a circular maw lined with rotating, bony plates. It chittered, a sound like grinding stones. It wasn't interested in the fleeing canoe. Its attention was fixed on me. On the lures frozen in the ice beside me. On the black veins now threading across my chest, spreading towards my heart. The cold was total now. Peaceful. The thing's chittering wasn't menacing. It sounded familiar. Welcoming. The ice beneath my feet groaned. More fractures spread. The thing heaved itself higher, its limbs scrabbling for purchase on the black ice. One hooked limb reached towards me, not to grab, but to touch. Towards the black veins. Towards the source of the cold. I didn't flinch. The numbness was complete. I looked down at the frozen lures, vibrating faintly against their icy prison. My reflection in the obsidian ice wasn't human anymore. It was a silhouette of pure black veins, pulsing in time with the thing's chittering. The ice cracked wider beneath me. I didn't fall. The black veins anchored me, rooting me to the dark mirror, to the frozen gateway. The thing's limb touched my boot. The black veins surged, connecting, flowing into the chitinous shell. A jolt of pure, electric cold shot through me, not painful, but profoundly connecting. I understood. The lures weren't bait. They were anchors. I wasn't the hook. I was the catch. And the lake was finally reeling me in. The chittering became a triumphant shriek as the black ice dissolved around me, not into water, but into the lightless expanse below. The last thing I saw was Thomas's canoe, a tiny, frantic speck nearing the distant, glowing shore of Lake Louise. Then the cold, the dark, and the grinding embrace of the thing from below swallowed everything. underscore 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 underscore. Thomas stumbled onto the shore near the chateau boathouse, gasping, his lungs burning. Dawn was painting the Victoria Glacier pink. People were already milling about, taking photos of the stunning vista. Normalcy. Safety. He collapsed onto the cold gravel, shaking uncontrollably, staring back at the vast, placid, turquoise expanse of Lake Louise. It glittered innocently under the rising sun. No black ice. No vortex. Just pristine, glacial beauty. A young couple walked past, laughing. "Beautiful morning," the man called cheerfully. Thomas tried to answer. His voice caught. He looked down at his hands, still clutching the frost-blackened paddle he'd used to escape. He dropped it like it was red-hot. As he did, he noticed a thin, faint line of blackness tracing a path under the skin of his right index finger. Like a tiny, branching root. Cold. Barely noticeable. He shoved his hand deep into his pocket, trembling. He looked back at the lake. The sun was higher now, dazzling on the water. For a fleeting second, he thought he saw a tiny, dark spot out near the middle. A spot that didn't reflect the light. A spot that seemed deep. And from his pocket, buried in the fabric, a faint, metallic tap-tap-tap vibrated against his thigh. He froze. It wasn't his heartbeat. It was something else. Something cold. Something patient. Knocking from within his own skin. He closed his eyes, the image of Lucas dissolving into the black ice burned onto his retinas. The lake hadn't let him go. It had just attached a longer line. The mountains watched, impassive. The glacial water of Lake Louise sparkled, impossibly beautiful, impossibly deep. And somewhere in that perfect turquoise darkness, an echo waited. Thomas clutched his hand tighter in his pocket, the faint, insistent tapping a counterpoint to the frantic hammering of his heart. The fishing trip wasn't over. It had just changed locations. The echo beneath the ice had found a new place to resonate. Inside him.